Football is finally back, and yesterday, August 8th, Thursday, we were grateful enough to have 11 preseason games. Here are the top player performances that are the most fantasy relevant from yesterday's action. What's going on, fantasy football fans? I'm your host, Hussein the Brain, and you're watching The Couch. If you're new to this channel and love fantasy football, love great content, and want to get fantasy football advice, I highly recommend you subscribe to this YouTube channel and hit that bell icon so you won't miss anything. Let's start off with the most obvious killer performance. David Montgomery, Chicago Bears running back. Matt Nagy said, Jordan Howard, please leave, go to Philly. And then he pointed and said, David Montgomery, I want you. And he went and drafted this young, talented running back. I'm not too worried about a committee. There's not a lot of running backs to draft in fantasy. If you haven't noticed, you can't get too picky. And this guy has the upside. He's in a great situation. Good O-line, good offense, good coach. He racked up 6 touches for 46 yards and a touchdown, but the stats don't really show the story. If you've seen him absolutely beasting in training camp and you saw him absolutely beast in the preseason, you can tell this guy's going to be really good. He can catch, he can run, and it's only been one preseason game, but his stock's already rising. He's going to go from an early 4th round fantasy football draft pick all the way up to the 2nd round, and I would definitely consider drafting him at the end of round 2. That's how good he's going to be. Just clear cut, Montgomery is an RB1. Performance number 2, Baker Mayfield went 5 for 6, 77 yards, threw a touchdown to Rashard Higgins. He looked really good, just like how he looked when Tyrod Taylor got injured last year and Baker came in and completely set fire to that franchise in a good way. Like, it just went from a bad franchise into, oh man, we can actually win games. And he looked just as good as he did last year with Odell Beckham. And I absolutely love David Njoku this year. I think Baker Mayfield is an elite quarterback. I would definitely draft him in fantasy if he were to fall to, let's say, round 8, which sometimes they do, because the opposite is happening to quarterbacks as it is to running backs. Running backs are super scarce. You can almost never find a workhorse, and quarterbacks is super deep. There are literally 20 quarterbacks that you could start week 1 in fantasy. The performance I was most excited to see, probably wasn't the most exciting performance, but nonetheless, it did not disappoint us, was Kyler Murray going 6 for 7, but realistically, he went 6 for 6 because Keyshawn Johnson touched the sideline, didn't know where he was on the field, came back and caught the ball. So it was a completion. It's just that Keyshawn Johnson got a bit too excited. Kyler Murray looked fast. He threw the ball perfectly and quick, just like we've seen him do in college and we've seen him do in training camp. And he eluded some would-be rushers. He looked really good, man. So if he can stay healthy this year, I pretty much can guarantee you he will be a top 10 quarterback. There will be some woes for him as a rookie, some incompleted passes, some interceptions, some inconsistency, but that doesn't matter too much when it comes to fantasy. Of course it does matter and is important, but he's the franchise QB. They traded away Rosen. They're going to be running a lot of plays. They're going to be throwing the ball a lot, and their defense is probably not going to be that good, so they will probably have to throw in the second half and in the 4th quarter to try to keep up. The only way they can win games is to throw the ball and outscore their opponents. And I drafted Kyler Murray in the Instagram Experts League around round 10, I think, and just hoping he stays healthy. Don't get hurt in preseason, bro. Just a little bit of a surprise to me was Austin Ekeler, and this is definitely a situation us fantasy owners need to note. He looked really good and seemed to really grasp that starting role as running back for the Chargers with Melvin Gordon out. Look, if I'm the Chargers, I'm not paying Melvin Gordon. Word is they offered him $10 million, and Melvin Gordon said, trade me. No to $10 million. He wants $13 million. Deal can probably get done at 12, but really, why pay him? It's really not worth it. The only realistic reason I see paying him is if the Chargers are super desperate to win a Super Bowl this year and just sign him on what I believe is a bad deal and not worth it. You can roll with Austin Ekeler. He got 8 yards per carry. He looked great in the running game. He looked great in the passing game, and even though he fumbled, they rolled with him. He had some wiggle. He looked like he can definitely play the role. Next up is Devin Singletary, one of my favorite draft picks in Dynasty. Look, if you can't get Montgomery or Jacobs, you don't have the first overall pick in Dynasty. It's pretty wishy-washy, especially with this year's draft class. I mean, there are some gems, but it's really those two at the top, and I'm really a big fan of N'Keal Harry as well. But later on in my couch rookie dynasty draft, I was able to get Devin Singletary. But looking at what's going on with Frank Gore's age and LaShawn McCoy's age and rumors that Shady just might get cut or traded, Devin Singletary may have some value in redraft leagues. He's a really good stash in the late rounds. If you can get him round 11 or later, I really like him. And I have a feeling that we'll know sooner than later if Devin Singletary is going to get his opportunities. The stats were okay: 9 attempts for 27 yards and 3 receptions for 21 yards. But the two really big points to take from Singletary's performance, not looking at the stats, was how he moved the pile. He played really well. And one of the bigger questions for Singletary was, can he receive? Can he be a receiver? And I saw it in college that he could, but his stats really didn't show. And that's how it is with a lot of college running backs. Sometimes they have to learn how to catch, or they're just not used that way because the college game is so different and they don't need to be used that way in that system. But Devin Singletary proved that he can catch, and not me, but for those of you saying that, oh, he might be small or whatever, he's 5'7", he sure didn't look like it against NFL defenders. And number 6, Justin Jackson. Little bit of a disappointment for me because I was telling everyone Justin Jackson's going to get the biggest boost when Melvin Gordon is gone. And that's probably the case if you really think about it, because Justin Jackson's value would be pretty much zero if Melvin Gordon was playing and healthy, and so he would get a significant boost. I just thought that he would look a little bit better. I'm not too surprised though. I knew he was raw, I knew he was talented, but this is what's going to happen now. I think Justin Jackson really has to improve, really has to get better. Other than that, Ekeler's going to be the starter. The good thing though, if you did draft Justin Jackson in early drafts or you're targeting him, Ekeler may not be a true 3-down back, a true workhorse. He probably won't be. So Justin Jackson should be sprinkled in, and he's going all over the place in drafts. So if you can get him as well, round 11 or later, but sometimes he's going round 8, round 9, round 10. Sometimes he's getting forgotten about if you're drafting on a platform where he's ranked number 300 or something. They didn't update their rankings. Sometimes you can get him as the last pick in your draft. Then we have KALEN BALLAGE. This is definitely not that exciting of a situation, as the Dolphins are probably the worst team. I believe they're ranked number 32 to win the Super Bowl according to Vegas odds, and this is a situation you probably want to avoid, but still worth noting. Who's gonna get the carries? Who's gonna get the snaps? Is it gonna be Drake or BALLAGE? They can both do similar things. BALLAGE can catch, BALLAGE can run. Drake has a little bit more wiggle, a little bit better a route runner, I would say. BALLAGE has a bigger home run hit. They're both okay, and they're both on a bad team, so this is a situation you probably do want to avoid. It's worth noting though, BALLAGE did run with the second team. If you're going with, let's say, 0 RB strategy or something, you may have to target a Dolphins running back, even though I don't recommend it even with that strategy, and I pretty much don't recommend you going 0 running back in the first place. A couple other players I want to talk about sticking with the Dolphins is Preston Williams. Amazing preseason performance by him. 4 receptions, 97 yards, a touchdown, some big plays. He's probably not going to be fantasy relevant, but then again, I wouldn't be shocked because the guys ahead of him on the wide receiver totem pole are Devontae Parker, Kenny Stills, Albert Wilson, Jakeem Grant, Allen Hurns, or maybe not even really. It's probably a wide open competition for who's going to be starting at wide receiver. And because I put out so much DK Metcalf content, I wanted to talk about him. He only got 1 reception for 8 yards, but with Geno Smith throwing the ball, Russell Wilson didn't play at all. Geno Smith throwing the ball, there were 2 lawn balls that he missed on, Geno Smith missed on, that DK Metcalf looked pretty good. So I did really like what I saw with him when corners are giving him 10-yard cushion and he's still beating them. He's strong, he's fast, he will be used as that big play wide receiver role. People say he has no agility. That's fine. He won't be running Edelman routes. Just Similar to Preston Williams, not a ton of competition for Metcalf to be starting in 3 wide receiver sets, maybe even 2 wide receiver sets. Lockett, he's the number 1 wide receiver there. Then we have David Moore, Jaron Brown, and rookie Gary Jennings, who got 2 targets but no other stats. Even though DK Metcalf's floor is really low and he is super risky, taking him as your wide receiver 5 or maybe even have to take him as your wide receiver 4 is totally okay. I feel like it's worth the risk, and I do believe he will be a starting wide receiver come week 1 or sooner than later, because if he's not starting week 1, that's fine, because he's not a top 3 wide receiver you drafted. He's going to be on your bench in fantasy when you play week 1. Make sure you guys subscribe to this YouTube channel by hitting this couch icon over here. If you enjoyed this type of video, make sure you like it and leave a comment below if you want me to do more videos like this. We also have a second channel, Fantasy Couch Podcast. Make sure you guys subscribe to that one as well. Lots of good content on both. I'll see you on the next video /livestream/podcast.